And I came here in 1986 to run it for myself, and I signed the papers, and I was owner of the Red Barn Incorporated. People come in here for the experience, more so than I think anything else. And they love the fact that somebody's actually taking the time to listen. Maybe you learn in proportion to how much you listen and care. If you can find that balance between doing what you love that isn't really work, that might pay the bills, and can resonate with people and actually to some extent help people. Without my customers, I would be doing what I don't love, guaranteed.
Today's Kennebec Valley Forum is brought to you by Dan and Scott's Cremation and Funeral Service, Sunset Flowerland and Greenhouses, and KSW Federal Credit Union.
Welcome to another edition of Kennebec Valley Forum. Today we're here at KVCAP to talk about transportation, and I'm going to let Andrea Pasco, Director of Communication, introduce the members here today.
Yes, my name is Andrea Pasco, and as Clyde mentioned, I'm Director of Development, but do handle all of the communications here at the organization. And to my right is Jim Wood, our Transportation Director, and our Chief Operating Officer, Michelle Prince.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Jim, this is going to be essentially communications about the transportation issues, and I knew you've been here for a while.
43 years.
We won't say, well, okay. I didn't want to know. Well, anybody know how old I am? But yeah, you've done well getting the transportation system up, running, and I'd like to hear a little bit about the history of it, if I could. From you.
Sure. KVCAP actually has two distinctly different transportation programs. We have what's called our Explorer system, which is our general public transportation program. We have routes that run throughout the Gardner and Waterville area, and a few years ago we expanded up into Somerset County, have some public transit routes, and now serve Skowhegan, Madison, Anson, and Norridgewock, and more recently services that we're providing in Jackman, Bingham, China, and Vassalboro.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
that function a little differently than some of our other systems do, but we've been working for those communities for several years now to try to come up with some transportation solutions. What we're all facing throughout Maine, as well as our service areas, an aging population of people that are looking for different transportation options. You know, people are hitting stages in their life where they want to remain independent and active in their communities, but for whatever reasons can or shouldn't be driving anymore.
Right.
So we're trying to make sure that people have plenty of options available. We can probably say that we rebranded our transit system in 2011. We went from the system that was formerly called KV Transit, which was smaller, but did a redesign with new buses and new schedules and a lot more community involvement. We had a whole bunch of new partners that are working with us to develop the system. And we went from about 44,000 riders in 2011 to 103,000 riders last year on our public transit system. So something we're very proud of. I mean, it's a continued work in progress. You know, we're working with a lot of age-friendly committees throughout our service area to try to increase services even more, working with colleges, working with veterans, working with a lot of different groups, because not surprisingly, it seems like just about any group of people I talk to, transportation percolates up into one of the top three issues.
So the Explorer is one program.
Right. We also have what we call our KV Van program, which is labeled as a demand response program. That's predominantly for medical services. We do a lot of work with Penquist Brokerage, who is our partner for the main care transportation. Sure. We're currently doing about 1,400 rides a day, you know, for main care recipients. Yeah, throughout Kennebec and Somerset counties, and that's more of an advance notice service where we have a combination of agency vehicles, many of which are equipped with wheelchair lifts, and our drivers all have special training to transport people with disabilities. And we also have a core of right now about 90 volunteers who are people who operate their own private motor vehicles for a mileage reimbursement. And if anybody in the community is interested in volunteering, we're always looking for more volunteers. The people that we have in our system tend to find it very rewarding and very community-minded people. But we're doing probably 300 to 400 rides a day with our.
Excuse me.
Bless you. Yeah, with our volunteer services, and it's a great option for the rural areas where the transportation tends to be one-on-one. Type of stuff where people in a rural area going to a doctor's appointment or therapy or counseling or work programs. Sure. And, we also do a lot of work for the Department of Health and Human Services Child Welfare Division for people who are under protective custody of the state. A lot of kids that are in protective custody. We do transportation for them, getting them to parent visits, and wherever the social workers feel it's important for the kids to get services to help develop.
That's really something. You really, from 43 years ago, you've come a long way.
We've come a long way. Yeah, the program has changed pretty dramatically over that period of time.
Now, there's a lot about, going back here, drawing some of my knowledge of funding issues that have arisen and with the government constantly changing and the state especially.
Right.
How are things working, Jim?
Well, we're making progress. I know at the federal level, which is where the lion's share of our public transit money comes from. There was a reauthorization bill that went through a couple of years ago. That's a 5-year bill, so it gives us pretty stable funding for the next 5 years.
Great.
The other piece that has worked in our advantage with the success that we had is what were formerly formula grants, where we just had a fixed amount of money every year to work with. They've transitioned those to discretionary grants, where so what they're really focusing on is those areas of the state that are demonstrating success with their public transit programs, and where the greatest need is where they're prioritizing the funding. So we've been able to take advantage of that. We're still working with state legislators to get some more state funding. There's not a lot of state operating assistance that comes in, but there was a good bill that went through the last legislative session that got very good support from the Transportation Committee. With the fiscal note that was attached to it, it kind of got tabled once it got to appropriations for other priorities, but we're optimistic that it'll be worked out and that we'll get some funding going forward on a state level. And then on the local level, we're always looking for partners to help us out, because our grants are formula grants, so that for the federal and state money we have, they're matching grants, so that we need to match that with local resources. And we have a number of towns and cities that are good partners with us, but also a lot of private organizations, the most predominant one being Maine General Medical Center. It's been a fabulous partner with us over the last several years. It really helped promote.
Individuals or small nonprofits donate?
Some of them do, yeah. We've got a number of sources, and that's where Andrea's worked with us closely to try to develop some of the smaller organizations. Banks have made several contributions. The local area Chamber of Commerce has been a good partner with us, and so that's one thing that we're always trying to do, is grow those partnerships to help people that recognize the importance of public transit, good comprehensive public transit.
That's good. Andrew, let's speak a little bit about the financial end of it.
Sure. So we held our third annual golf tournament and silent auction this year in June, at Lakewood, and that was specifically to raise funding for the Explorer system. As Jim mentioned, every private dollar we raise is matched dollar for dollar by federal money. So it's definitely something that a lot of businesses that I approached and were excited to support, knowing that their donation was actually doubled and having a huge impact. And I also think that the business communities are really recognizing that public transportation, it brings an economic benefit as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It brings people in to shop locally, to use local services, to get to work, to get to school, post-secondary education. There are so many young people in the state right now who are really struggling between cost of housing, student loans, And so a lot of them have to decide, is it really feasible and affordable for them to own a vehicle?
Right.
And for some young people, it just isn't something that they can afford right now, but yet they're involved in their community and want to be actively, gainfully employed. And the Explorer is helping them get to and from work.
That's awesome.
And giving back economically. We had a few campaigns specifically around the transportation department. We have many private individuals in the community who have contributed toward the effort.
Good.
And I guess what I would say is, if you care about public transportation in that, especially in that broader, growing our community, both economically and also helping people feel more connected to their community and have the ability to access the resources and the services and the shopping that they need.
Sure.
This is a great investment for people because there is that double gift basically and when they give to our program. And I can't really emphasize how important it is for us to raise those private dollars, whether it's through individuals, businesses, municipalities, because without those dollars, that would severely hamper our efforts to maintain what we have and even explore, additional expanding of routes and just serving more people.
Sure. How do they get in touch with you?
How do they
If
get
want
in
to
touch
donate.
with me?
If there's a company out here, which
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be, or individuals, nonprofits that want to donate or to help with the transportation issues, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can certainly call me. My number is 873. No, it isn't. I was going to say my old landline phone number. It is 859-1630, and they could email me. It's andreap@kvcap.org. And I would be happy to speak with anybody who is interested in learning more about how their donations could impact that program at any time.
Yeah, they could also visit our website.
They can visit our website. We accept online donations right through our
Oh, there
website.
you go. That's pretty fast.
www.kvcap.org.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple.
It's a very simple
I can remember
process.
that. That's good, because money drives the wheels, literally.
Yes.
And if we can, excuse me, get the match money, then, that much farther down the road.
Right.
Right.
And it's 2 for 1, I heard you say.
Basically, it's
yeah.
matched dollar for dollar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's a great return for.
Yes, it is.
And,
Yeah.
and-
And just the return to the communities is
Yeah.
even bigger than that. It's hard to put a price tag on people's independence.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
it is.
and not
Absolutely.
surprisingly, it's, there are a lot of seniors on fixed incomes that use our service, a lot of people with disabilities that this is their main resource to stay active in the communities.
A great example would be this past spring, I met with a young woman who rides the Explorer every day to work. She lives in Benton and works in Augusta. And as a very young child, she began to lose her eyesight, and so now is completely blind, and so obviously can't drive, and had to move from Hollowell back into her parents' home for a short period of time, and was really concerned about how she was going to get to work each day, and connected again with the Explorer and the commuter ride from Waterville to Augusta. And the work that she does is so essential. She's actually going in and working with young people with physical disabilities in high school to help them transition into going on to post-secondary education.
Awesome.
And to me, it was just the perfect example of how the Explorer public transit really helps the whole community. It's getting her to work, allowing her to earn an income, allowing her to put her income back into the local economy, and strengthening the next generation of workers. I mean, it's a whole circle effect when you
Yeah.
look at how it benefits people.
That's an awesome illustration, because as you go forward, you see these people that you're helping, and you don't realize it maybe, but you help the town of Mount Vernon they have adopted sort of your plan
Mhm.
and a neighbors driving neighbors
Yep.
program that they've established.
Yeah, and
which is
we were
very
partners
good.
with them to help that,
Yep.
to get off the ground, and they're doing some really good work.
Yes, they are. So it's not just the transportation that you're handling, but
Mhm.
there is a lot of other transportation modes that are out there in the world that have started.
Yeah, because we go
based
with the
upon your
realization,
43 years of knowledge.
yeah, and we're not, I really, our future, I hope, is that we can do more. We always want to be able to do more, but we have some limitations, and, so we're always happy to work with other partners that are willing to try new programs, and especially in rural areas, take some creative options, I think, to
Tell
to
me
get
about
people
your
in.
relationship with Penquist.
Our relationship with Penquist, several years ago, I think we're going back 5 years now, the state made a significant transition in how they administer Medicaid main care transportation. And up to that point, we were the regional transportation provider for Kennebec and Somerset counties.
Right.
So all of the transportation went directly through KVCAP, and then we could work with people to assign different resources. About 5 years ago, the state went to what they call a brokerage model to kind of separate out the trip arrangement from the trip delivery
Okay.
pieces and put it out to a statewide bid. And the first rendition, there was a company called CTS that became the broker for several regions throughout the state.
I remember that one.
That lasted about a year. Yeah, that didn't
Not so good.
turn out the way that people had hoped. But then there was a second round of proposals that were issued, and KVCAP, they're a sister organization out of Bangor, had been one of the few really successful brokers for their particular region during the first year of service, and we partnered with them to submit a proposal for both Region 3 and Region 4, which is Kennebec and Somerset County. And they were successful in getting that proposal. So now they manage all of the trip facilitation. It's a very unique partnership, unlike any other area of the state. And we're grateful for it because KVCAP understands, being a sister nonprofit organization, like we are.
Sure.
They understand the challenges and stuff, but what their role is they take all the phone calls for main care transportation, determine eligibility. If people are eligible for a friend and family driver reimbursement, they process that. Other than that, they send all the trips through to us, and then we handle all of the transportation arrangements for everyone outside of that. And that can include agency vehicle trips, volunteer trips. We work with some of the waiver providers directly, and we work with several area cab companies too.
That's
to-
pretty good.
to meet
That's pretty
people's
good because
transportation needs.
It helps, as I see it, and it stretches your capabilities and allows you to do more.
Well, we're trying. Yeah, it's we're always looking for new resources. It's like I say, the demand continues to grow. Like I say, we're currently processing, through us about 1,400 rides a day. So
That's a lot.
yeah, it's a pretty heavy
That's a
workload.
lot. Now, how does your 1,400 a day? That's just you dispatching from here.
Right.
The Explorer goes through the Penquist.
No, Explorer is us internally.
Okay.
Is all KVCAP. The Penquist piece is strictly main care recipients going to main care covered services.
Okay.
The Explorer stuff we handle directly, and that 1,400 is independent of the Explorer rides. We're doing another several hundred rides a day on the Explorer system independently. We also have contracts with the Department of Health and Human Services to do some general low-income transportation that we process directly through KVCAP without having to go through through Penquist. And that's for people who have incomes up to 200% of federal poverty guidelines, but don't have main care, or maybe going to some services that aren't main care covered, but still, we typically focus that on medical transportation. A lot of people going to dialysis services, or we find there's a lot of seniors that don't quite qualify for main care, but still need access to services that we can get them
that's
to.
a gray area.
Yeah, it still gives us an option to get them to their medical appointments.
Oh,
And,
that's awesome.
for cancer treatments, dialysis treatments, mental health services, and a variety of
So
other
how's your schedule work?
I think
Not your schedule.
I think it would be great to highlight the difference between our established routes in Waterville and Augusta and Skowhegan and sort of that newer model that we're employing in the rural areas. But certainly you can speak best to how that is working.
Yeah, with our Explorer system, for the service center communities, it just makes a lot of sense to have fixed stops, and we have maps available on our website, and we actually have a dedicated Kennebec Explorer website too that shows all the
Wow.
routes and so on.
Yeah.
But those are based on timetables where the buses follow regular routes. We do go off route up to 3/4 of a mile to help people with disabilities, but we have the timetables and regular routes that people can predict pretty accurately. The model that we've used in Jackman, Bingham, China, Vassalboro is more of what we call a demand response model, because it's such a broad rural area that it would be kind of impractical for us to just set up bus stops throughout the whole rural area, because we don't always know where people are going to be. So those routes we're doing is what we call a demand response model, where we're making the buses available certain days a week. We have people call us in advance to schedule the ride, and then we'll pick them up at their homes and take them to their destinations. Yeah, and it allows us to kind of gauge what the service demand is and so on. And rather than just having the buses running inefficiently over broad rural areas, we can kind of focus on where the specific needs are. And it's a fairly new thing for us with the public transit side of things. We've been doing that for years with the van program. That's what that is. It's mostly a door type of operation. But
Make an appointment.
but we think it's a practical solution for the rural areas, and we look forward to working with more rural
I
communities
would think
to try to
so,
develop
because there's a lot of communities between here and Jackman.
yes, there are.
Skowhegan and Jackman and all that. I don't know if you work in Bingham at all.
Yes, we have an agreement working with Bingham also.
Yeah.
We have local services in Jackman and Bingham on 2 different days, and then we have a service that runs on Fridays, goes from Jackman down through Bingham to Skowhegan, and we can pick up people all along the way.
That's cool.
Yeah, so if folks want a great leaf peeping opportunity,
There you go.
what better sites are there to see for leaves going up through Bingham and the Forks and all of those areas? But every time I go, I'm driving, so I can't really look around. So one might want to consider a Friday afternoon in late September, early October for
Better the local bus than the one from New York City.
absolutely.
You get a lot better view.
Yeah.
Yes, and our buses are comfortable. I will
Yes.
say I've ridden in them,
Yeah.
and there's also almost a camaraderie among people that are riding these buses as well.
Oh, yeah.
I've done it a few times, and you see there's certain folks that go every time there's an opportunity, and for some of those people it's simply just to get out of their homes
Sure.
and see some different scenery and see some people, because they're isolated, they're living on their own.
Yeah. And for a lot of folks, this is their social activity, and
It
it's
is.
become very important. Yeah.
And you'll see I saw a gentleman who he could walk. He had a cane, but he struggled. It wasn't super easy. Yet when the woman was being lifted down in her wheelchair and wheeling up to her door, there's this gentleman, and he's got her shopping bags, and he's bringing them out to her, and they don't really know each other. They ride the bus together, and they're friendly, and
Sure.
it's just a real sense of helping one another, and
Boy, that's great.
they're really open. When I've ridden the bus and just asked folks for feedback about what they like, what they'd like to see, they're just very open and grateful for the service.
Yeah, I can well imagine.
Yeah.
What about it? I think it would be great, we mentioned the Leaf Peepers, to have an organization, maybe a Colby College or any of them, to charter a bus just for that. I would think that would be a prime.
Well, that's one thing that we don't do is charter services,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
because there were some restrictions in the way our
Oh,
federal
okay.
funding comes through that we, you know, to keep them as open door routes, you know.
Sure.
So
Okay.
we haven't really gotten into the charter service piece of it, although we've been asked, you know,
Yeah, I
a
bet
number
you
of times,
have.
because there's not a lot of options in this area
No.
actually for that,
No.
but we're working pretty hard just to keep up with the demand that we have.
Yeah.
So.
What's the average cost for the ride? on
The
bus?
public transit routes are $1.25 in town if you're staying within one community, $1.25 if you're going to adjacent communities, and $3.50 between Waterville and Augusta. So it's still
That's
it's
doggone
pretty affordable for
reasonable
people.
For people to be
Yeah.
able to go out and, you know, we've got great shopping here in Waterville as well, but, you know, sometimes you want to just, as you say, for social issues or whatever, go to Augusta.
Yeah, and what we have, you know, when Maine General moved their facility down to North Augusta, one thing they recognized was important was to have access both for their consumers that needed to get down to the hospital, also for a lot of their employees. So we have commuter routes
Wow.
that start as early as 5:30 in the morning and run till about 8 o'clock at night that are more focused on getting employees back and forth between the two areas. And you know, not surprisingly, we have not only Maine General employees that use the service regularly, but also a lot of state employees, which I think, you know, Andrea referenced earlier, that need to get back and forth to Augusta. And so that's been pretty popular, yeah.
Really, really interesting. I think that fee schedule is so important because so many people are on fixed incomes and,
Right.
you know, to go from Waterville to Augusta for $3.50, you
Yeah.
can't afford to drive for that.
Right, and we also have monthly bus passes available, you know, and for the commuters, we've offered some special rates for people that use it every day, you know, to make it more affordable for them and
Wow.
stuff, and it's worked out well.
I got a feeling the more people that ride it, the more comfortable they're gonna be.
Yeah, and we found especially in the wintertime, that's when we get our biggest compliments out of that, you know, those days that are,
Bet you do,
that
yeah.
are kind
It'll
of
shake you
iffy,
to
that,
death.
you know, people, boy, I'm so glad I didn't have to try to drive down there on my own today.
Yes,
And-
absolutely. Yeah, I rode to Augusta on one of those days.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there were a few people on the bus because the weather was bad and they didn't want to drive, but they felt comfortable in the bus.
Yeah.
Just
That's,
going.
that's interesting, especially with the hospital
Yeah.
and all that, the change the dynamics tremendously.
Yeah, yeah, and they've been really good partners with us. As has Inland too. Inland's been good
Oh, yes.
partners in Reddington,
Yeah.
Fairview. We, you know,
Yeah. But I think it's, that Augusta route and hopefully the city of Augusta is participating and.
Yes, they are.
You know, the state hopefully will get there.
yeah, yeah. It's
eventually, you know,
well, what we're seeing is that at every level now, it's starting to become personal for people. You know, and people
Yes.
are recognizing that they're seeing it in their own families. You know that. As the elder members of their families are aging, a lot of families are having to look at, okay, you know, the person really shouldn't be driving anymore, but
Yeah,
you know, how do they get to the grocery store? How do they get to the doctors? How do they get to, because with a lot of families, particular, you know, middle-aged couples, both family members have to work just to support the household, and then you have this extra burden where you want to take care of your elder people too. A lot of people just can't afford to take a lot of time off from work and can't,
no, that's
you
very,
know,
very true.
it poses a challenge for the families. So, and that's happening with, no matter where you go. I mean, I think, you know, even a lot of members of the legislature now are starting to have that dynamic too. And it's kind of changing people's thought patterns a little bit. You know, how do we keep our people active and vital in our communities, you know, if they can't drive?
Yep, that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that happen. Michelle, how do you handle all this?
Well,
So you're not just gonna escape it, you're not.
well, one of the things that I wanted to really hone in on and talk about, it's been mentioned a little bit, is that match money is so important, because if we don't have it, we can't even utilize the full amount of federal funds that would come to our area to be able to utilize. We hate that thought that there's money out there and service that we could be doing, but we can't tap it if we don't have enough of the match. And what's happened over several years, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but you know, local communities are struggling too.
Mhm.
So
They are.
some of those communities where where we would be natural partners to get that match. Maybe they've had to cut back, or maybe they haven't cut back, they've flat funded us, but you know, costs go up every year. So that's why we've really had to partner with Andrea and internally work harder on finding other partners,
Sure.
such as other nonprofits or private donations or doing fundraising events, because we really want to maximize those federal dollars so that we can help people here in our communities
Sure.
to get their transportation needs met, and it's a challenge.
Oh, I'm sure it
Yeah, it
is.
certainly
because
is.
The community's right up against the wall.
Yeah, yeah. It's been challenging with revenue sharing issues and education funding issues. You know, they've had a hard time, reconciling their own budgets, and
Right.
you know, we understand that. And it's you know, and I'm a taxpayer. You know, it's you know, I don't always go in with my hand. You know, yes, I want to pay more money in taxes. You know,
No,
and so
as a selectman, I can verify that.
you're right. That doesn't happen a lot. Yeah.
No.
So we understand the challenges that the communities are facing, and
That's right.
yeah, but it's like with any budgeting process. You know, a budget is it's a matter of establishing priorities, and you know, what we're seeing is this is becoming a priority in a lot of communities.
It'll be a management headache for you. Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to mention when you're talking about the fees, the fares for riding, there was a woman that I met who worked in housekeeping at a nursing home. And this was in Somerset County, and she didn't have a vehicle. And initially, she was taking a cab, a taxi, $18 each way to and from work. Now you take, she was an older woman.
Yeah.
Chances are not making a whole lot more than minimum wage.
Right.
And a good portion of her income was going just to getting to and from work. When we began offering the Explorer system throughout Lower Somerset County, it changed it. I believe at the time the fare for her was $1.25. Changed it to $2.50 a day. And just imagine how much more money that allows her to then spend on the things that she needs to have a comfortable living situation, and again, to put back into the local businesses that are providing all of the services and products that we need to be comfortable. So that to me was pivotal to, you know, $18 each way. And I know it's the same for folks who live in Waterville, then need to get to Augusta. So if you take a cab from Waterville to Augusta, it's about that same fee.
Oh, sure.
There are lots of folks that need to go to Augusta for some of their benefit services, whether it's through to the VA, through Department of Health and Human Services. Lots of those services now are they're in Augusta. They're not, you can't access them here in Waterville.
Right.
And those folks are the folks who are struggling often the most financially, and need some way to access those services, and they can now do that for a much more reasonable cost than having to take a taxi.
I know, I see the van down to Togus once in a while.
Yeah, we got service out to Toga several times a day.
Yeah, it's very nice, and I see people riding it, and I think that's a great thing. It really is.
Well, we're really some of the newer initiatives that we're really focused on is you know, trying to get some enhanced service in the Waterville area. You know, we're really seeing an increasing demand, and especially amongst the colleges, you know, students. But also, you know, an important connection that we're trying to develop is connecting our systems in Kennebec County with the systems in Somerset County, and trying to develop a continuum so people could get on even in Upper Somerset County and continue all the way down to Togus if they needed to, because you know, service for veterans now has become a big issue also. Yeah, it's a big issue.
And that's one of our biggest gaps, is that right now there's no route between Skowhegan and Fairfield.
Yeah.
And that has been one of those things that folks that I've met on the bus has said this would be really great if we could get this service. So it's something that we continue to explore.
I would think that the community college being up there would more people, students coming
Yeah.
to Skowhegan to
We've
there.
worked with KVCC. Not surprisingly, in order for that to be successful, you have to develop some economies of scale. You know, you
Sure.
need to have, you know, so it's going to involve having several partners, I think, that could benefit from the partnership. But not surprisingly, we've got employers up in Lower Somerset County, namely like Backyard Farms and New Balance, that have an interest in getting reliable service for their employees getting back and forth to
Sure.
work. But you also have KVCC, which wants to get students from both Somerset County and from the Fairfield campus up to
Right.
their classrooms in Hinckley. And then we're having a growing need from just regular consumers and, you know, the public in Skowhegan that want to be able to access Waterville services to go shopping or, you know, go to the doctors or just take advantage of a lot of the things that the Waterville area has to offer.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're thinking, you know, just by developing those in tiers so that we can, you know, maybe very early in the morning, we focus on the commuter transportation and then focus on the student population and then the general public pieces where we can, you know, generate those economies of scale to make it all work.
That's great. I know you've been a busy man. You've been very successful in 43 years too. You've done real well with that.
Well, thank you.
I think if people now can see where the benefit's going, then hopefully they will open up and contact KVCAP.
Yeah.
And either through the website or in personal contact to get more money in here, because it's a great thing to have, in my opinion.
Yeah. And anybody who wants to call, our toll-free number is 1-800-542-8227 if somebody's interested in just getting 1-800-542-8227.
There you go.
And they can call and we could provide them with more information about our services or, you know, any questions that people have about it, or, you know, our people at our reception desk can
That's
certainly
awesome.
direct them to the right person that they need to
Yeah.
talk to.
I know that when you originally started, there's a lot of bumps on the highway there, so to speak, pardon the pun. But,
Yeah.
but growing pains and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but it looks like now that it's really working very, very well, and
Yeah.
except for the funding issues.
Right,
and
we're
stuff,
we're
which-
still going through some growing pains, but it's growing. And,
Yes.
and just what feels good to me is just the substantial growth that we've seen over the last 5 years in the system. Is just, you know, we've worked really hard to prove that if you build a good system and you do it right, the people will use it and use it in substantial numbers. And we know there's an unmet need out there, even in the DOT's strategic transit plan. I mean, there's a huge unmet need throughout the entire state of Maine, you know, that they're working to try to develop resources to
absolutely.
meet. And we know that there are some states that dedicate substantially more funding and have more resources. And where those exist, I mean, they're very successful and very, very popular. So
Yep.
it's just a matter of making those, you know,
Oh,
getting the
absolutely.
infrastructures in place and you know, keeping our state viable.
Yeah, because there's a psychological thing that plays in your favor, that people don't like to go north, but they will travel south.
Right.
It's a psychological thing in Maine and many northern states, and you get down the other side of the border and people go south and won't go north.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think there are some challenges, but I do say that you've done very, very well. And
Thank you.
There's a lot of bright future ahead for you.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
For Maine as well.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. We're hoping so.
the old adage, so go you, so goes the state of Maine.
Right.
Have wheels will travel. What happened to the state had a program that they were running for a while on transportation and passenger service, like from Portland to Augusta, and they were doing Go Maine, was it?
Yeah, the Go Maine project still exists as a ride-sharing program, but the van pools that they had, they stopped running. We actually were the beneficiaries of some of those vehicles that they had in service, and some of those now we're using to run the commuter routes that we have between Augusta and Waterville. So they're still serving their original purposes, but the state didn't want to, they didn't feel it was appropriate for them to be in the direct service arena, so they basically turned that over to the regional providers. and-
good.
Yeah,
In a sense.
in a sense, yeah, but it's, like I say, it's given us some opportunities to,
That's
you know,
great.
particularly demand to expand some of our commuter services.
Great deal. Now, give me the whole area that you cover in both programs.
Kennebec and Somerset counties, you know, so we cover everywhere from Gardner up through Jackman up to the Canadian border, and from Monmouth and Vienna and services over there over through Pittsfield, you know,
Yep,
east to west. So we cover a pretty broad service area.
yes, you do.
Yeah, if you look at it in terms of land area, we're almost as big as the state of Connecticut, you know, so it's yeah, and
And
not,
then the challenge being, we're almost as big as the state of Connecticut with not even a third of, or quarter, or a tenth of the population.
right.
Right.
So that really is one, and I know it's all throughout Maine, but certainly within our service areas is that rural nature.
Mhm.
If you may live in Skowhegan, but Skowhegan is quite broad, and you could live, 8 miles from the center of town. And so that's a huge challenge. And I personally love this new demand response in some of these communities, because the reality is if we set up a bus stop at the post office in Vassalboro, that's wonderful, unless you live 6 miles away.
Can't get to the post
Then you
office.
can't get to the post
Yeah,
office
it
to get
defeats
on
the
the bus,
purpose.
and it defeats the purpose. So I think being creative and thinking sort of out of the box, at how can we meet the needs of transportation in a rural area? It can't look the way it would look in the city of Portland,
Right.
or even Bangor. Certainly not Boston.
No,
It has to
right.
be a different type of system in order to really reach people where they're at, and to be cost effective enough to be viable and continue operating.
Absolutely right. I don't expect any service to Chicago very soon.
No subway going up there.
But you do well for the area that you have, and provide a great service. And
Yeah, we've had to be creative with it over the years. I think, the volunteer network that we have was a creative solution that kind of came out of the child welfare world, several years ago. That,
oh yeah.
it just, it makes practical sense, and for the people that volunteer for us, it gives them a good sense of community and a good way to contribute. While also, for a lot of our volunteers, they do okay with the mileage reimbursement system too, and so it's, but it's a good solution for me. It makes sense here, given our.
It's amazing the growth that you said from 2011 to
I know.
now.
Yeah, yeah,
It's-
That is astronomical.
yeah,
If that isn't a
Unbelievable.
testament to the need,
yeah.
Oh, big time.
then what?
Yeah.
When you have 100,000 rides
Mhm.
that have grown
Yeah.
from what, 40?
Yeah.
Yeah, in just 6 years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And one of our bigger issues still remains supply and demand. For as many resources as we have, it's a constant challenge to try to keep up with the demand.
If I lived in this area, I certainly wouldn't be driving a car too much. But I can go to Augusta for
Yeah.
$3.20.
Yeah, and for a lot of families,
You can't drive out of the driveway for that.
yeah. So for a lot of families, it's it's helped them to stay employed without having to have 2 cars in the household, or in some cases without even having to have one. Which gives them a still very reliable way to get back and forth to work, and without having to incur all that expense.
Yeah.
So they can spend more on their housing, or spend more on their kids, or spend more on other things that are important to them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm surprised that if you don't double this transportation in a few short years with the price of gas and
Yeah.
fuel and everything where it's going, to be able to drive back and forth.
So, having said that, one of the things that we're always looking for, as I think Andrea mentioned, were volunteers, people who want to be volunteer drivers and give back, but also drivers. It's a challenging workforce environment right now, and we're always looking for good drivers. We
Mhm.
have different shifts available. We have
Mhm.
part-time shifts, full-time shifts.
Different
Weekend
requirements
shifts,
based
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for somebody who may wanna, just work 4 or 5 hours a day or something during times to have the rest of their time, available, which, you know.
That's great.
I know there are
That's
some
fantastic.
retired, well, a lot of our drivers now are people who've retired from some other profession, but, you know, wanna do something to stay involved, and, it's a good way to do that.
And Jim, not all our drivers need to have full endorsements.
No, the people that operate our Explorer system, the bigger buses on our Explorer
Yes.
system needs to have commercial driver's licenses with P endorsements, but
Right.
our van program, it just requires a regular Class 3 driver's license with a clean driving record.
And they get in touch with you with the same
Yeah,
contacts, if they
1-800.
wanna volunteer.
542-8227. Yeah. Right.
Very good point, because there are people out there, I'm very sure, that will be interested in volunteering and helping this
Yeah,
organization.
volunteered, and we have, again, some paid staff too. Our agency vehicles are all operated by paid staff, you know,
Yeah.
these are people that get a regular hourly wage and fringe benefits and
That's
and
awesome.
so on, you know. And,
great.
you know, having been a person who started their career here as a driver, you know, I can tell you that, you know, what motivates me every day is, you know, the work that I did as a driver, and those, you know, just try very hard never to forget who we're doing this for, because I made some amazing contacts when
I'm
I was
sure.
driving, met
I'm
some
sure you
awesome
did.
people that, yeah.
Sure you did. Well, I wanna thank you for allowing us to have this interview today.
Well, we
we
appreciate the
appreciate it.
opportunity. Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's gonna be some people out there that wanna get in touch with you, either about the rides or about volunteering or
Sure.
donating money, and I encourage them to do that. And I think it's a wonderful organization, and you're providing a great service to the central Maine area.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much, Clyde.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And that'll do it on this edition of Kennebec Valley Forum. We'll see you next time.